Hey folks, how's it going? Welcome everybody. People from all over the place. Africa, Scotland, Vancouver, Barcelona. Awesome. Thanks for joining me. I'm really excited to talk about one of my favorite topics, how to write better project proposals. Can everybody hear me okay? Just let me know in the chat that you can hear my audio. I would hate if oh wow, Berlin, New Zealand, good morning. Barcelona, South Carolina, Dublin. Loud and clear. Great, thanks. All right, so we've got a lot to cover today. This topic is taken from the first week of the pricing seminar, so it's an entire week worth of stuff that I'd normally work through over the course of a Monday through Friday. But I want to give you the highlights here and teach you three key considerations around writing better proposals. Let me share my screen and we can pull up the slides. Boom. All right. So while I'm setting this up, I'll let you know, please keep having conversation in the chat if you want to say hello to each other. I won't be able to see it as I'm presenting. So if you do have questions, I'm going to stop periodically to answer questions. Put them in the Ask a Question tab. You should be able to find that down at the bottom. It says Ask a Question. It gives you a spot to enter a brief question and other people can vote it up or down. And when I take breaks, I'll go in and answer as many of those as I can. All right, let's go over to, let's hide that. And show slides. Yep, you should be able to see my slides now. Cool. All right, so here we are. What is this and why should I care? So if you're like many people, it takes you a really long time to write project proposals. It could take hours. It's usually torture. You're just staring at the screen, kind of wondering what you should write. Feel like you're kind of winging it, making things up, trying to sound professional using big words and so forth. Don't really have a template to work off of. It's not something you learn in school or really anywhere. So it's fun to teach, and today you're going to learn all of the important pieces that you need to know. The other thing that's frustrating about proposals is when you submit them, they don't close. What's your close rate? Is it 10% of the proposals you send in close? Is it 50% of the proposals you send in close? Or is it more like 80 or 90% of the proposals you send close? You should be able to close 80 to 90% of your proposals. If you're sending out proposals and you're only closing like half or fewer than that, then you're definitely doing something wrong, either attracting the wrong kinds of clients, having the wrong kinds of conversations with them, or not doing a great job with your pricing or whatever else is in the proposal. Yeah, and then we're also going to talk about value pricing proposals today so that you can increase the profit that you make at each price point. So, if you want to make more money without working more hours, you're in the right place. So the content's going to be broken into three sections. What you're going to learn is the anatomy, sort of the sections of a project proposal, value pricing curves for your project options. And that probably doesn't make any sense yet, but we'll go into it. And probably most importantly, the third thing we're going to talk about is what to do before you even write the proposal. So that makes the agenda for today these three things: the three key sections of a proposal, setting your project prices, and conducting a sales interview. All right, so we're going to jump right in because we've got a lot to cover. Jump right into the first section. The three key sections of a project proposal. So I've been using the same project proposal template since 2006, so it's like 15 years. I had tons of very successful consulting engagements over that time. And the template is only 5 pages long. It didn't matter if it was for a $15,000 a month retainer or a $200,000 or $300,000 project. I even had one that was, that had project options in the millions. It's 5 pages. It doesn't need to be 250 pages of, scope document, or, here's exactly what we're going to build. Here's what we're going to do. It doesn't need to take you a week or a month to put together a proposal. It should only take you about an hour. If that sounds shocking, stay with me. So you can see the 6 sections here, but there are 3 that are the most important. The 3 most important sections are the situation appraisal, or you could call it the project overview, but I like situation appraisal, sort of like what's the situation, the project options, of course, and the payment and terms section. The other 3 sections I'm not going to cover today. They're kind of cover letters, kind of obvious. Risks and assumptions is relatively obvious, and why me is just the things about you that make you uniquely qualified to work with this particular client on this engagement. So those probably aren't too tricky. The other 3 are where all the magic happens. All right, the first one is the situation appraisal. This should really only be a page. It doesn't even need to be a full page. It's made up of 3 subsections. It is where the client currently is at, their current state, their current situation, where they want to be, their desired future state, or the transformation or the difference that they want you to contribute to. And then the last part is your perceived contribution. What is it that you can do to contribute to the transformation, moving from point A to point B? You're probably not going to do it single-handedly. You're probably going to contribute to that transformation. So if they, for example, if they wanted to, increase revenue, and you are a web designer, you're not probably directly going to increase their revenue. Or if you're a branding person, you're not going to directly increase their revenue. But if they're talking to you, they believe that someone like you can contribute to that desired outcome that they have. And you want to, in this section, you're going to state why they think you can contribute to that transformation. So it's boom, boom, boom. Here's where you are, here's where you want to be, and here's why you asked me to submit a proposal. So that's the situation appraisal. Then the meat of the proposal are the 3 project options, and I would always supply 3 options, always 3, not 2, definitely not 1, and not 4, 5, or 6. So the 3 options should be incremental, meaning that option 1 is standalone. Option 2 includes 1, but also some more things. And then option 3 includes 1 and 2 and some more things. It's different. They're different in different ways. But they include the previous ones. They can't just pick a piece of 3 or a piece of 2 and a piece of 3. They can't pick just 3 and have that priced independently. And in the description of these options, you want to make sure that they are benefits focused. So what do I mean by that? Usually when you write a proposal, probably you say, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do the other, and then when I'm done, you're going to have deliverable A, deliverable B, and deliverable C. And that's you saying what you're going to do, what you're going to give them. But if you stop there, that's fine. You probably should do that. But if you just stop there, you haven't described the benefits of what is going to be different after the client receives, after you do your thing and the client receives the deliverables. So you want to connect the dots for them between, let's say you're going to write a white paper for them, and then that is going to move some needle for them that they actually care about. The benefit to them will be that they get more, increased signups for their newsletter or something like that. Something that they care about. Don't leave it to their imagination what this deliverable is going to do for them, or what this, whatever it is, whatever your engagement is, whether it's pure service or there is some kind of deliverable. Connect the dots for them for each option and say, and I will deliver this 30-page white paper so that you can get more downloads on your opt-in, or you can get more opt-ins on your email list, or so that your CTO will be perceived as a thought leader, and that will be reflected through an increased number of requests for interviews in magazines like Forbes or Wired or whatever. So some kind of success metric that the business cares about, that your deliverables or the service that you provide will generate for them. Okay. And then the third section in the proposal is payment and terms. So this is sort of surprising. When people see my proposal template, I don't put the prices on the three options. I put them way at the end with all of the payment terms and all of that stuff, because for a variety of reasons. But when people first open up a proposal, they probably talk to you for a half an hour or an hour, maybe more. There's been some back and forth. They're pretty excited to read through it, but they do want to cut to the chase. They're going to open that thing up and they're going to scan the document for dollar signs. So you want to have I don't like having the dollar signs like in line buried in the body of the document. I like to have them way at the end. So if they scan through, they get to the end, they say, oh, here are the dollar signs. It's like $10,000, $22,000, and $50,000. Option one is 10,000, option two is 22, option three is 50. But, well, what's in option one? Like, all of a sudden they've got the pricing, they can see it. It's like one sentence, not even a grid. It's just a sentence. So like, okay, well, now I guess I have to read this thing. So then they have to go back and actually read through the three options, and they're going to have those prices in their head, and they're going to be thinking about the difference between each option. What's the delta? What do I get for my $12,000 additional for option two? And they're going to be more engaged with the content and the benefits, and really thinking about what they get for their money. So the benefits, are the benefits worth the money? Here's a pro tip for you. Since people do scan for dollar signs, if you can put a dollar sign in the situation appraisal, that first section we talked about, then people are going to see that first. They're going to scan down, they're going to see this dollar sign, and it's going to say something like $100,000. They're going to say $100,000 for a white paper, and then they'll actually read it, and they'll say, oh, that's the estimated benefit to the company, or that is the estimated sales increase, or that's the estimated amount of money that we're losing from some inefficiency. And then this person, your proposal is here to contribute to either improving that number, whether it's taking it up or pushing it down. But if the value to the client of the transformation, the switch from point A to point B, is worth roughly $100,000 a year, then it's perfectly reasonable for you to charge $10,000, $22,000, and $50,000 if you can contribute to improving that number in a meaningful way. Okay. So that's why I put all the prices at the end in the payment terms. I ask for 100% upfront payment terms. And the psychology here is that if you ask for 100% upfront, it's some people are going to be shocked by that. But honestly, if your pricing is in the ballpark, most people will not be shocked by that. It depends on what you do, and it depends on how big the project is. But it was fairly common for me, I'd say like 75, 80% of the time, for people to just pay me. It's like upfront without even asking or pushing back at all. But there will be a group of people who push back on paying 100% upfront for a variety of reasons. And that's fine. It gives you something to negotiate instead of the price. So instead of them saying, geez, we'd really like option two for the price of option one, then they can say, wow, 100% upfront, that seems odd. And now they're talking about the payment terms, they're not talking about the price. And so it gives you something to concede. You can meet them in the middle and say, well, how about 50% now and 50% in 30 days? Or 50% on whatever next date you want. So you can negotiate with them around the terms and not negotiate with them about the price. That reminds me, the reason I didn't tell you the reason why three options is so important. The reason three options is so important is because more options becomes confusing, and fewer options, especially one, no options, basically just the one, is like an ultimatum. And it's really hard for for anyone to judge absolute dollars. They need relative dollars. So you want to give them something to compare to. So if you just give them one price, the only thing they can compare it to is by going out and getting other proposals or quotes from other people. And then they can compare those things together. But if you give them three options, they can compare option one to option two and option two to option three. And then they're thinking about which way should they work with you instead of whether or not they should work with you. So that's the psychology behind the three options. The idea of having 100% upfront is to get them to negotiate something other than the prices. I would never negotiate a price. And then the last thing here, which is surprising, is the expiration date. If you don't put an expiration date on a proposal and you send it in and they ghost you, you don't hear back, they just disappear, they're probably shopping around or who knows what they're doing, but you don't want a situation where your follow-ups seem desperate. So you want to set the stage so that you can follow up with them in a professional way without appearing desperate. So if you send in a proposal and at the end it says this proposal is good until 2 weeks from now, 14 days from now, I'll follow up with you on let's say you send it on a Monday. I'll follow up with you on Wednesday if I haven't heard back. You haven't heard back on Wednesday, you send them an email. Hey, haven't heard anything. Just wanted to make sure you got the proposal. No hello, no goodbye, just that. And then if you still haven't heard anything on the Monday, just hit them again and say, hey, just want to let you know this proposal expires on Friday. So, I can't guarantee pricing or availability after that date. Hope to hear from you soon. Please reply when you get this or something like that. So since you've got this deadline and the clock is ticking, you can reach out to them and be the professional. They're the ones that are being unprofessional by not getting back to you. You can be professional and say, hey, just wanted to remind you this thing is going to expire. And after that, I might not be available. I'm going to move on. I've got other things going on. I'm not going to sit around here and wait for you. So this gives you a way to continue communicating with them if they go silent without seeming like you're desperate for the work. It's super important. All right, so I'm going to pause here real quick. I know I'm blasting through material, but I'm hoping that you'll have questions and then we can get into your specific questions with a little bit more depth. So let's take a break now. Let me jump back to Slack. Slack. Crowdcast. Okay, cool. Definitely have some questions. Let's try and get through as many of these as I can. Okay, Brendan asks, in my sales discussions, we've almost always arrived at specific deliverables even when I have the why conversation. Are there things I'm missing to serve them better, or are my clients' situations just too simple for 3 options? Well, it's hard to know. I don't know what your clients' situations are. It is possible to have situations that are that aren't really a project, that aren't what I would call a project. Like if your toilet is clogged and you need to call a plumber to unclog it, that's not a project. That's just a task. And there's no, if the plumber showed up and was like, so, tell me why you want this toilet unclogged. I would be like, get out of here. I'm just going to do you want to do it or not? So, but when we're talking about a project, I'm talking about a non-trivial collaborative effort between you and the client that is going to last like 3 months, probably at least, maybe 6, maybe 9, maybe 12, 18, could be long. And it's got a beginning, a middle, and end. It's got a done state. It's got that desired future state attached to it. So if somebody comes to you and they just want their toilet unclogged, the API broke, can you fix it? You're not going to say why. They just want to get back to the status quo. They had a normal situation, something broke, and now they want it fixed. That's not what I would call a project. So I wouldn't go through, you could take it or not take it. I wouldn't take it. I'd just be like, oh, you could just get someone else, refer them to someone else. So it is possible that their situation could be too small to warrant a proposal. It's not really a project. But in a situation where you're a recognized expert for what you do, ideally, you're a recognized expert for some specialization or in some niche market, then people are coming to you and they'll say like, well, we want your expertise applied to this project. And I'll actually stop there because we're going to talk more about this in the 3rd section when I talk about the sales interviews. But it is possible that the client situations that they're coming to you for are too small. But let's bookmark that. I'm going to talk more about that in the 3rd section. Okay. Question here. Would you be able to share an example? Yes, I'll share a proposal template after the webinar is over. I'm going to send out an email to everybody with the replay link and I think 4 or 5 bookmarks to resources that you can use. And one of those things will be a proposal template. By the way, if you're watching this replay, you should still get the email, but if you don't, you can email me directly. I'm sure you have my email. You can find it on my site very easily. Next question. If your services can be partially beneficial to the desired business outcome of the client, how do you measure that and then put a price tag on it? We're going to talk about that soon. Great question. We're going to talk about that soon. How do you feel about performance revenue-based commission pricing? This is a marketing agency, so we'd love to align ourselves with revenue growth that we drive if possible, e.g. 3% of revenue or 15% of marketing spend. This is doable. This is a good way to make good money if you're super confident in delivering results. It's more risky, and therefore you should get more reward. So if you're comfortable with that, I would be comfortable with it for you. Me personally, I've almost never done this. It's an extremely rare situation where I'm working with like a coaching student or something like that, and they are like so solid at what they're doing, and I just align with them perfectly that I'm like, yeah, I could really see a kind of a percentage based situation where like I write proposals for them, so that, you know, they don't do the proposal piece, I write the proposal, and then if the deal closes, then I get 10% of whatever piece closed. So the tricky part is I do agree with the 3% of revenue thing. I never understood the 15% of marketing spend. That just seems like a tax to me. I don't understand that. I especially don't understand it if you are recommending, as the firm, if you are recommending that they spend $1 million on Facebook ads, and oh, by the way, we get, 15% of that. It makes no sense to me. And I understand that it's not uncommon, but you could potentially differentiate yourself from people you compete with by saying, we don't do that marketing spend stuff. That's silly. It makes no sense. The more we recommend you spend, the more we make. Well, what do you think that's going to do? Like, what financial incentive do you think that creates for an agency? They're going to tell you to spend more. So we don't do that. We base it on results. What are the results you're looking for? You're looking for increased revenue or profitability or opt-ins or decreased churn or increased net promoter score, whatever they're looking for, you know, better brand recognition, whatever they're looking for. If there's a way for you to measure it and track it to dollars and you're confident, sure, go for it. Let's see. Next question. What if the proposal is close but not exactly what they want? They clarify and you send a new proposal, but maybe you need to change the price. Is iterating over proposal a problem in itself? This is something I would consider doing if you really wanted the client and you just really felt you did a bad job in the sales interview. So, and I've done it a couple of times where, you know, I meet with someone, I think I understand their desired future state, I think I understand what they see as my contribution, but I'm just totally off the mark. And I sent them a proposal that's just dramatically priced higher than they were expecting. So they're like, wow. Sometimes when you overprice, sometimes when you get things wrong, it could be underpriced, but usually you overpriced it. If you have a good relationship with the person and they're not angered by how high your price was, because sometimes it'll just make people mad. They get inequity aversion and they feel like you're trying to gouge them or something, and they'll just be like, this person's a jerk. But if they're like still engaged and they're just confused and like, geez, we really wanted to work with you, but this seemed way out of line. These prices are just way 10 times more than we were expecting. I would potentially say, oh wow, my bad. I must have misunderstood what you guys were hoping to gain from this. You know, in the situation appraisal, did my desired future state seem accurate? And if they said no, then I wrote the wrong proposal. And if they're still engaged, I would write a new one. Basically do over from scratch, have another call, be like, well, what is it that you do actually want? And you could go over the territory that you covered before. I remember you said this. What did you mean? I interpreted it this way, but you must have meant something else. And they can clarify, and then you can get a new sense of the value, and then just do a new one. On the new one, since you've iterated so much, I might not put 3 options. I might collaborate with them on the call to just come to an agreement right there on the call. So once I get that extra clarity and I say, now I get it, you only want to do this, it's only going to be you, I thought it was going to be your whole team. What about if we just, for $10,000, I'll do this innovation workshop just with you, and we could start it on Wednesday. And then just try and close it up there. So we're just kind of do it live. It is extremely rare, though. That should be a rare occurrence. A rare occurrence. You want it to be. You don't want that to be happening often. It just means you're not doing a great job in the sales interview, so you have to get better at that. Next question. How can I switch from working with low prices on Upwork to working on big contracts outside of Upwork when no one knows me? Well, get people to know you. It sounds stupid, but that's what you need to do. Become famous for something. Become a big fish in a small pond. Pick a small pond, go in there, help people with whatever skills that you have. Go in there, help them, answer their questions, become well known for something. Become the go-to person for, I don't know, let's say you're an architect. Become the go-to person for palatial dog houses. So billionaires who want to have a 3,000 square foot dog house, you're the guy or you're the gal. So become known for this incredibly specific thing, and then you can own that space. You're the mansion, the doghouse mansion guy. So just become well known for that and attract your own clients. The other thing that I sometimes recommend to people who are on Upwork, two other things really. One is just use it to keep the lights on while you're doing this positioning work outside to attract ideal buyers. But you got to limit it to like 10, 20 hours a week or 30 hours a week if you have a lot of energy, so that you've got 10 or 20 hours a week left over to work on your business, to work on your positioning, to engage with people in your target market, to help ideal buyers in forums or on social media, answering questions on social media or in Quora or Stack Overflow, and be helpful to a very specific target market, that to enforce your positioning around the doghouse mansion guy. And that's what you do. It's simple. It's a lot of work, but it's not complicated. And then the last thing I do, and it's if you have really good ratings on Upwork, or even if you don't, I guess I worked with one person who was afraid to go off of Upwork, and she was like, I don't know, I feel like that would be cutting my own throat. And I said, all right, then if you're going to stay on there, then set your prices higher than anybody else that does what you do. And immediately that's going to make you stand out. So people who are looking for high quality, they're just going to assume you're high quality. If you're the most expensive, they're going to say, well, she must be the best. You got to have the chops to back that up. You can't just do that and with 2 stars. But the fact of the matter is, on Upwork, you search for your thing, you sort by price, and you look for the price that you want. And if you see somebody that charges $1,000 for, I don't know, a landing page, $1,000 an hour for a landing page, or $1,000 an hour for a logo, you're going to read that profile. And if anybody that is attracted to that kind of a profile is exactly the kind of buyer you want. It's the kind of buyer for whom money is no object, and they really just want the best. Anywhere, the other option is to be the cheapest, but I would never recommend doing that. And then being anywhere in the middle is just garbage. It's a garbage place to be. So either be at the top or the bottom, and don't pick the bottom. All right. Next, how do you break down the price of a project in 3 tiers if everything needs to be done? What could be the options? We're going to talk about that more in the next section. Thanks, Sarah. This one I think I already answered. Is there a good way to back out of a situation where you oversold? You probably lost the project, so don't worry about it. Do a better job next time. Or if the person is still engaged, collaborate with them and come to an agreement on the phone. Oh, good one. Do you ever go over the proposal in person or via video conference? I never do. If you're going to do that, I would still write the proposal, but not send it, and then put together like a comparison chart of 3 options with a typical SaaS comparison chart where you've got all of the features and benefits listed, and then like option 1, a bunch of stuff is crossed out, option 2, less stuff is crossed out, and option 3, nothing's crossed out. And then send that to them they get on the video call or in person if you can do that. You give them the piece of paper, or you share the screen, and you say, all right, let's talk through these options. As you can see here, we've got small, medium, and large. And this is what they include, and these are the benefits of each one. Let's talk about it, and then if one of these is acceptable, I'll send over the documentation afterwards, and then you can send the real proposal. Some people do that. I don't do that. No particular reason. I just don't do it. But I know plenty of people that do, and it's fine. the 3-column approach, like a one-pager. I think Blair Enns recommends that approach. Okay. Next question is, as a web developer, what can I offer that's worth $10,000 plus? We'll get to that in pricing, but basically you need to find someone who has a problem or an opportunity that's worth $100,000 to them, and then they'll gladly pay you $10,000 if they believe that you can contribute at least 10% to that transformation. That's the vague answer, but I know you're looking for a more specific answer, so we'll talk about that in a bit. Yeah, David Jane nailed it. Something that solves a $100,000 problem for them. Exactly. Let's see. So it's 1/2 the hour, so I'm going to pause on these. I'll jump back to them after. If people want to hang around, I can stay on and keep answering questions. I think the Crowdcast times out at, I'm not sure when, I think 2 hours. Okay. So let me jump back to slides. I think some of these questions will get answered automatically in the slides anyway. All right. Okay, so the next section here is setting your prices. So that last question kind of reminded me of this. All right, the key considerations here. You want to scope last, not first. This is going to sound insane, especially to software developers or anybody that is normally in the process of building out something that takes months. This sounds nuts, but it's not nuts. It's actually doing it the other way is nuts. Pricing curves. We're going to talk about pricing curves a little bit and how much space to have in between your 3-tier options. And then a little bit about justifying your prices. All right, so what does scope last mean? So in the situation appraisal of the proposal, you want to say you're in this current state, you want to be in this desired future state. And you believe my contribution is like X, Y, and Z. You believe you reached out to me because someone recommended you, or I'm a recognized expert in the space, or we worked together in the past and I already am familiar with the system, whatever the contribution is, and why ever they think you're the right fit. When you're talking to those folks, when you're talking to them in the sales conversation, and this will be section 3 today, but when you're talking to them, you want to find out what it's worth to them. And I know you have a million questions about how do you figure that out. We'll get there, don't worry. But you got to figure out what it is worth to them. Everything is worth something. It must be worth something to them, or they wouldn't be talking to you. They are spending precious minutes of their lives to talk to you about this project. They believe that there's a possibility that you can help them with something that's worth something to them. They might come to you and say, hey, we want you to make the buttons bigger on our website, or we want you to make our checkout mobile friendly, or we want you to write a white paper for us. It'd be about 35 pages. They might tell you all these deliverables and tasks, and it's like, here's what we want you to do, punch list of things. You got to ask why. Why do you want that? What's a white paper going to do for you? That's crazy. What are you going to pay me $1 million to do a white paper for? I'm an expert at this. Why would you hire a specialist? Write your own white paper. We're going to talk about that more later, but you figure out what it's worth to them. How will they know that it was a success? Through that why conversation, which is section 3 today, you get a rough idea of what the project is worth to them. It might be, it'll be a dollar amount, but it might be intangible. It might be something like, the reason we're talking to you like you're, like an e-learning expert is because we want to empower our employees more because they are churning out, or because we're getting really bad customer service ratings from our customers are giving us bad ratings on our customer service, or they've got some metric that they're looking at. They have to. They wouldn't know something was wrong. They wouldn't be spending their time talking to you if they didn't know something was wrong. They want something. So you've got to find out what that is, and that is going to be worth something to someone. If you spend $5 on a Starbucks, you don't get a direct ROI. You don't make $7 if you spend $5 on a Starbucks. But that doesn't mean it didn't feel worth it. Like you said, $5 for a Starbucks. I want that really bad. I've been up all night. I'm crashing a deadline. I'd pay $20 for that Starbucks right now. I'd gladly give you $5 for that, venti Pike Place. Stuff is worth things to people, even if it's not going to have a direct ROI. So this is the art of value pricing. This is the art of pricing project proposals, is getting an idea of what something is worth to someone. It would be amazing if they said, oh, well, if you do X, then we're going to make $1 million more a year. That would be great. Hardly ever happens. But if you're a salesperson or some sort of conversion rate optimization person, then it's possible that you could get there. But in general, or a cost cutter, somebody who cuts like Amazon bills in half, like if somebody's spending $100,000 a month on Amazon and you can like wave a magic wand and get it down to $50,000 a month, then yeah, you're really close to the dollars and you can easily justify really high prices. Most people are not in those situations, but that does not mean that what you do and the change that you can make isn't worth something to the person. If it wasn't worth something to them, they would not be talking to you. Okay, so start with the value. Once you have a rough idea of the value, let's just say the overall outcome of this project, remember project beginning, middle, and end, you'll know when it's done. When it's done, if that's worth like $100,000 to them, then great. Then you pick some prices underneath that. You haven't even decided what you're going to do yet. You say, all right, if the value is roughly $100,000 to them, it's worth roughly $100,000 to them, the same way a venti pike place is worth roughly $5 to me. Then you say $10,000, 10% of the value, $22,000, and $50,000. Okay, those are three prices that are a fraction of what I think it's worth to them. What can I do for $10,000 to help this client move from point A to point B? I'm not going to pick them up and carry them from point A to point B. I'm going to help them in some way for $10,000. And then that's when you define your scope. What would I do for $10,000 that I'd be happy to do, totally worth it to me, and it will move that needle for the client? Maybe just a little bit, maybe more than a little bit, but it'll move it. So that's your option one. Option two, $22,000. What would I do for $22,000? I do option one. What could I do in addition to help move the needle more so I can contribute more, take more ownership over the transformation? Same thing with three. What could I do for $50,000? I'm going to devote more attention, or I'm going to, whatever, bring more skill to bear. I'm going to take more responsibility. I'm going to give a better guarantee, whatever. You think about that last. And I know most people, especially software developers, think about the scope first because they're planning to do a time and materials or cost plus pricing where they figure out their costs, they mark them up, whatever that means, and then they present that as a price. Or you just do it by the hour and you're just like, I don't know how long it's going to take. I don't know how much it's going to be. You take all the risk. So scoping last, it's a bizarre, flipped upside down way to think about things. I understand that. It's 180 degrees different than what most people are used to doing. But it's a far better way for both parties because the client can never pay more than it's worth in this model. If you're reasonably good at getting a rough value estimation, and that takes practice, I admit, it's not the easiest thing in the world to get an idea. But if you are basing your prices on the value, they can never spend more than it's worth. Versus hourly, where if you've billed hourly for any length of time, you've probably had a situation where you said, I think it'll be about $10,000. Here's my estimate. And they end up paying you $20,000 or $30,000. They can end up spending more money with you than the whole thing was worth in the first place. Then they get angry. There's a lot of fighting. They're questioning hours. Now you're doing all this administrative back and forth. Every time they send an email, it's all caps headline, and you're like, it's just a bad situation for everybody. So I think this approach it probably feels crazy. It takes a while to get your head around it, but the concept is very straightforward. How much is it worth? Then set three prices that are a lot less than what it's worth, and then figure out how you can contribute to their success within those three budgets. That's huge. I know almost nobody's going to like immediately get this or agree with it, but that is the key right there. Okay, so pricing curves. What are pricing curves? So pricing curves are like the delta between the three options. So it creates like a curve. So I've said a few times, if I estimated that the value to a client for the project is $100,000, then my prices would be 10,000, 22,000, and 50,000. And that's a pricing curve I got from an e-commerce site that did studies across like all of these purchases and what the best shape is to drive people to option 2. So I called it the first one. Oh, first one is might as well pricing. I'm actually talking about Goldilocks, so I'm going to talk about that first, even though it's the second bullet. Goldilocks pricing is my favorite. 10, 22, 50. So it's like 1x or 10% of the total, and then 2.2x, which is 22% of the total value, and then 50% of the total value. And the difference, since the difference between the prices increases as it goes up, so like the distance between 2 and 3 is much bigger than the distance between 1 and 2, it's going to make option 3 feel really expensive. It's going to look like a premium option. So most people, given 3 options, are going to gravitate to the second one anyway. And when you set this high anchor price of like $50,000, it's like, geez, that's a lot of money. That's more than we were expecting. And then 22 starts to look like, wow, that's like less than half of 50,000. So like, well, what's the difference? Is the stuff in option 2 and option 3, is it worth the difference? Nah, maybe. Is it worth $28,000? Nah, probably not. We don't need option 3. Option 2 looks pretty good though. And then what's option 1? They look at option 1. It's like, it seems kind of bare bones. We wanted a little bit more assistance than that. So this Goldilocks pricing curve is going to drive people. The pricing drives people to option 2, plus human psychology drives people to option 2. Given 3 options, most people don't want the cheapest and they don't want the most expensive. They feel safer in the middle. So you'll get lots of people picking that second option if you're doing a halfway decent job picking the right value. If a lot of people are picking option 3, then you're lowballing your own value or their value in your mind, and you should probably recalibrate. If people are just getting sticker shock every time, then you're dramatically overestimating the value. So it takes practice to have these sales conversations. A sales interview is like a performance art. No one's a natural at it. You have to practice it, but that is how it works. Might as well pricing is a situation that it's what I would use in a situation where I really wanted to land the gig. So in this model, the base price is like 1x, and then the second price is only 50% more. So if the base price was 10,000 for option 1, the second one would be 15,000, and the third one would be 17,500. And you see this kind of pricing with like Apple. If you're buying a computer from the Apple website, they're like, oh, do you want, you're going to get, I'm going to get the cheapest, 13-inch Air, and then you add this to it, and you add that to it, you add the other to it, and you're like, geez, at this point, I might as well buy a MacBook Pro. And then you add a thing to that, and you're like, well, I might as well buy the case or the stylus or throw in an iPad or whatever. They're amazing at it. You just add these little options, and before you know it, the less expensive option that you were planning on buying is like, well, I might as well get the better one. And before you know it, you're spending $3,500 on a computer. So that's the idea with the might as well pricing curve. It goes like this. Goldilocks goes like this. Might as well goes like this. And it's going to drive people to option 3 because they're going to look at option 1 and be like, oh, this is pretty good, but what's option 2? And it's like, wow, I might as well get option 2. If I'm going to spend 10,000, I might as well spend 15 for these extra benefits. I'm like, well, what's option 3? It's like, for an extra $2,500, we get all this extra stuff. So I would use that pricing curve if you're desperate for the work and you want to leave the least amount of money on the table. It gives the client something to compare prices to, so they're not going to necessarily be forced to go out and get other quotes. They feel like they're in control of what budget they want to select. So that's a good backup option. And then the third thing here, custom, is just there so to kind of illustrate that these two curves, the Goldilocks curve and the might as well curve, they're just guidelines. You can do whatever you want, really. So if the value to the client is $100,000, you could have a $1,000 option. A $1,000 option, a $5,000 option, a $75,000 option. You could do whatever you want, really, but you're going to want to justify your prices. So it could be that you get pushback from people if they think the prices are kind of high. So they might say things like, how did you calculate these prices? Or how many hours do you think this will take? And you're twice as expensive as anybody else. Why should we hire you? When people are hitting you with questions like these, it means your prices are in the ballpark. They're considering them. Otherwise, they would just not respond, or they'd just be like, no, get out of here. You're crazy. So you're in the ballpark. And these objections or this pushback or these questions are evidence that they are still considering you. So I would say, so in answer to these specific questions, how did you calculate these prices? I would say on past experience. I wouldn't tell them like, oh, I'm value pricing you. Or, I would just say, look, it's just based on past experience. Maybe projects of a similar type or working with similar clients, or this, I've been doing this kind of work for, 10 years. And it seems to me that it's about this, these prices are appropriate. And if they say, well, how many hours do you think it's going to take? And they're trying to reverse engineer your pricing into the hours. I would say, I don't know how many hours it's going to take. That's why I don't charge by the hour. It wouldn't be fair to you at all. That's why I give you a fixed price. So if it takes me longer, that's my problem. As long as they don't have some kind of bizarre hard deadline, like they need to have the project done by the next presidential election or the Olympics or something like that. As long as they don't have some kind of actual hard deadline, be like, I don't know how long it's going to take. I'm going to do it until we achieve the desired outcome, or your contribution to the desired outcome. So if your contribution is way upstream, then fine. But you're going to, there's a way to measure that you did what you said you were going to do, that you delivered the outcome that they were looking for. And it's just, I don't know how long it's going to take. It's different every time. You might say something like, well, it'll be at least 3 months. There's no way this would be less than 3 months, but I don't know how long it's going to take. But that doesn't affect you because your price is your price and you're not paid a dime more. And if it takes me 10 months instead of 3 months, that's my problem. And so if they say, you're twice as expensive as anyone else, why should we go with you? I would say, well, are the other people standing behind their prices, or are they just estimates? My price is fixed. You won't pay a dime more than the amount that you select. And I can put you in touch with 40 past clients that will attest to this fact. If you should go back to your other people and say, well, will you stand behind these prices that are half as much as mine? And if they won't, you should ask them why not. And if you're willing to take the risk of working with them at those lower prices, at those riskier prices or those squishy prices, then go ahead. That's fine. But if you want some certainty and you want to work with someone who's confident enough in what they do that they can give a fixed price for it and not be nervous, then you should go with me. Totally up to them. And if they said, no, the other ones are fixed prices too, then I would say, well, if you're looking for the cheaper option, I've been telling you all along, I'm not the cheapest option. So if you want the cheapest option, that's what you should go with. But if that makes you nervous, then you shouldn't. You should go with me. So that's how I would tackle those things. Okay. Reasonably on schedule here. Let's jump back to questions. All right. Let's see. Just start from the top. Louise asks, hi, I am B2C and the benefit of my customers is emotional rather than financial. Dog trainer. Can this proposal structure work in this instance? I don't know a lot about dog training, but my sense of it is that would be a better fit for a productized service. And I wouldn't value price a productized service because it's too much work. I would imagine, I'm just guessing based on ambient knowledge of dog trainer. I've never hired a dog trainer or anything like that. But I would say that assuming that the things that you do, the services that you provide, assuming that they are relatively fixed scope, or that you could pare down your offerings to stuff that's just fixed scope. In other words, it's basically the same amount of work no matter whose dog it is. Then I would say just pick a price that you're really happy with, that you gladly do it for, and then attract people for whom that price is a no-brainer. It's probably easier that way. For example, if you just said, you've got like puppy boot camp or doggy boot camp or whatever, and it's like, it's whatever, it's 2 weeks or it's a weekend or whatever it is. You could just say it's, I don't know, I'm trying to think, how much would I pay? I don't know, $2,000 for like a puppy boot camp or oh my God, what's it called? Potty training. What's it called? Like housebroken. So like housebroken hotline or something, come up with something where like the dog for $2,000, you will, is that what it's called? Housebroken? It sounds weird now that I say it. But basically for 2000, if I could have paid, because we have a year-old dog, so it was a puppy last year. Say like if we could have paid like $1,000 or $2,000 to somebody to guarantee that the dog would not pee in the house after this weekend, I would have done it. And if you were have access to people who are really wealthy, I mean, I'm doing okay, but I'm not like a millionaire or billionaire. So if you were in Beverly Hills and somebody has a $50,000 Oriental rug in the living room and they have a brand new puppy that's peeing all over the place, they'll pay $2,000 if you can guarantee to have the puppy house trained by the end of the weekend or whatever is realistic. I'm just making things up here, but pick a couple of specific services that you can stand behind, that you're really good at doing, set a price for it, and then attract people who would gladly pay it. Probably people with expensive rugs. It could be, and there could be a million. I just picked the potty training thing, but there could be behavioral issues or tricks. They want tricks. You could specialize in purebred dogs. They're expensive already in the first place. Or AKC, I don't know. I'm just kind of like riffing a little bit, but that's how I would do it. I wouldn't value price it. It's too much work, and it's not like unless you do something that's like a long-term project, like training a police dog or some kind of service dog that takes 6 months or something, then, well, there's one. You could do a project with like a police department maybe where you help the canine unit do like some new thing, but still, it could happen. If you had like a long-term real project that had the desired outcome, then you could price the outcome and then do whatever it takes to get them, or at least complete your contribution to that outcome. You could do it if it was that kind of a thing, but I'm making a lot of assumptions here, but hopefully you've gotten a couple of good ideas from my rambling. I think this is a good one. Do you use the proposal more to explain your company function / workflow, or as a financial point of sales with the client? I don't talk about my company almost at all in the proposal, except for the why me section, which we didn't talk about today, but it was listed in the anatomy of the proposal section. In the why me section, I will list highlights of why I specifically qualified my real strong differentiators for this particular client. It could just be that I specialize in their industry, or that I've got a patent on a process for a similar type of client, or I don't know. Whatever is specifically persuasive or meaningful about your company that would contribute to that, that would sway them or make you stand apart from any of your competitors. Could be experience in the space. It could be that you have no experience in the space and they really need a fresh pair of eyes. But the proposal is not a sales document. It is a cut and dry, unemotional, non-marketing, boom, boom, boom. It's all about them, not about you. Here's where you are. Here's where you want to be. Here's why you asked me to submit a proposal. Here are the 3 options, the benefits to you of the 3 different things that I can do. Here's why I think I'm a good fit for this. There's also risks and assumptions, but that's boring. And then the payment terms. It's like, here are the prices, 100% up front. This expires in 2 weeks. Let me know what you want to do. I'll follow up if I haven't heard anything. Yeah, so I don't put testimonials and stuff. Like, I would put in the why me section, maybe I would put a testimonial if it was super relevant. But if it was like, if you're talking to someone at Porsche and you're like, oh, the CEO of Ferrari gave me a free car, they were so happy with my results on the last project with them, or my expertise in the energy industry is such that I was given an award or something like that. But it should not look like a marketing page on your website. It should be it shouldn't appear persuasive. It's mostly you reflecting back what they told you. It should be more about them than about you. Next question. Okay, here's a good one. Any suggested strategies for identifying the borders between options, especially when the potential are broad or complex? In other words, what questions would you ask yourself or them to define options 1, 2, or 3? I wouldn't ask them to. I wouldn't really ask them about 1, 2, or 3. It looks like I'm all blurry. No. There we go. I'm back. So a classic situation for the delimiters between the three options are is to option 1 to do a DIY thing, option 2 a done with you option, and option 3 a done for you option. So option 1 would be some. Let's say somebody came to me, and let's say I'm a copywriter. I write white papers for cloud native startups, and I'm well known as a journalist who's really good at. I understand Kubernetes and all technical architecture, cloud architecture. I'm really good at that. And they would come to me and say, hey, we got your name from someone. We want you to write us a white paper. My three options are not going to be a 10-page white paper, a 20-page white paper, or a 30-page white paper, or 1, 2, or 3 white papers. Options 2 and option 3 are not more of option 1. They are different things. So it really gets them thinking about how to engage with you, and it positions you as more of an expert and less of a doer. So for me, in a situation like this, first, I would ask them why they want a white paper, and we'll talk about more of that in a second. And once I understood that, I would say, all right, well, in the proposal, when I send in the proposal, option 1 would probably be something like, I'll meet with the CTO and I will draft some ideas for the white paper. Maybe I'll outline it, and then I will give it to the CTO or whoever the experts are inside of the organization. And you guys can write it, you can post it, you can attach it to the workflow or whatever it's going to attach to, and done deal. You basically define the outline, you define the user persona, who the reader is going to be. You maybe figure out where they're going to distribute it, but they do everything. You just design the white paper. So you say, okay, so then, but they would actually write it. Option 2 might be that plus you will function as an editor and a coach for the people who are writing it. So maybe the CTO is going to write it and you help them with a more detailed outline, or you give them interview questions that they would then answer on their own, or maybe you interview them and have it transcribed and then give it back to them and they flesh it out. So they're doing some of the work, you're doing some of the work, but it's more collaborative, but they're still doing all the heavy lifting. So they're drafting everything and then you're editing it. So you're paring it down, doing what an editor would do, but you're not writing it, even though you're a copywriter and they came to you for you to write a white paper. And then the third thing would be, I'll write the whole thing, I'll interview a bunch of stakeholders, or maybe I'll interview other people and do like a whole thing, like a big research piece. This would be dramatically more expensive. And if they have a lot of money to spend and they don't want to, and they don't have a lot of time, the CTO is way too busy to do it himself or herself, or to even draft it and then have you edit it. They'll be like, yeah, fine, here's 50 grand. You go off, do the whole thing, interview whoever you need to interview, put the thing together, post it on the website, link it up to our email marketing, do everything. So soup to nuts, so they don't have to do anything. So all of that from like, hey, could you write us a white paper? So that's one. That's the most common pattern. All right. So got tons of questions. So I'm going to jump back to slides because we're getting up to 2 o'clock. I'm sure, Eastern time. I'm sure some people are going to have to jump off. But if you want to come back and watch the replay, I'll try and go through all these questions afterwards. And you can just come back to the same URL and watch the replay then. And there'll also be a follow-up email for anybody who registered that'll have slides and links to supplemental materials and so forth. Like I said, this is all material from the pricing seminar. If you need to leave, but you're interested in learning more about the pricing seminar, you can click on the green button down below. That's launching on Monday. And it has, and this proposal stuff is just week 1. There are 11 more weeks after that. Might be something you're interested in. All right, back to slides. Boom. All right. How are we doing here? Phew, 150 people still, 142 people still. Cool. I hope everybody can hang out. I knew this was going to be a little bit long because I'm trying to jam a week worth of stuff into an hour. All right. So the next section here, section 3, the last of the 3 sections we're going to talk about today is conducting a sales interview. This is where the art comes in. So this is art, not science. So it takes some practice, but this is super powerful. If you can get this down, it will dramatically increase your profitability. All right, so let me set the stage. You get some kind of connection with someone. Ideally, they would reach out to you and say, hey, we got your name from someone, or hey, we did a Google search and we found your name. We'd like to talk to you about doing some stuff for us. You say sure, and you set up a meeting of some kind, either over the phone, video, audio, in person, I don't care, some kind of meeting. And in that meeting, I want you to keep these key considerations in mind. It is not a pitch. You are not there to persuade them anything. You're not of anything, or convince them, or puff yourself up, or brag about your resume, or your skills, or your smart team, or your Herman Miller chairs. None of that. You're there to find out what they want. And what they want is that transformation from their current state to the desired future state. That's what you need to find out. You're not pitching them anything. So you would do what I call the why conversation while you're in there, and it feels like talking them out of working with you. What you're doing is uncovering their fundamental desire. You're uncovering the motivation for the project by testing their assumptions, pushing back on what they're suggesting that you do, pushing back on their self-diagnosis, and uncovering what the real motivation is, what the real goal is. If you do that, well, writing the proposal is going to be easy. The hardest part of the proposal is the situation appraisal. If you don't know what desired future state they have, you're dead in the water. You're just making stuff up. You're just going to write down a bunch of stuff about, I'm going to do best practices until I'm done. That's not necessarily going to translate into a positive business outcome for them because you don't know what they want. You're just assuming that best practices will do something good for them. Okay. So let's talk about the first thing. It's an interview, not a pitch. Ideally, you will have some kind of confidence or security, whether it's financial security or you've got a good pipeline of leads or you're just an incredibly confident person. But ideally, you want to be able to walk away from any deal. You want to go into a sales interview 100% willing to be like, I'm getting a lot of red flags off this customer. I think it would be better if they worked with someone else. You need to be genuinely willing to walk away from the deal. This takes all the pressure off, by the way. If you normally get butterflies in a sales interview, and the problem is you're worried about trying to persuade them or convince them or close them, all those gross kind of sales tactics. Don't worry about that. You're there to see if there's a good fit. You know, it's like there's no pressure. The only pressure is if you're desperate for the money. And if that's a separate problem. Don't be desperate for money. So if you have to go on Upwork and do 20 hours a week to not be desperate for money so that when you do go into a real sales interview with a real direct customer, you're not nervous or pressured to close the deal because you need the money to pay your car payment. Get yourself in a situation where you are not desperate for the work. That's key. You will know you're doing something wrong if you're talking more than 10 or 20% of the time. You should be asking short, open-ended questions, and they should just be brain dumping like crazy. If they're really engaged in the conversations and they're like, oh, that's a great question, like you're in good shape, you're doing the right thing. You should be taking loads of notes, like fill up 5 pages of notes. And I would say do it on paper. You could record the thing if you want additionally, but you should take lots of notes because that will keep your mouth shut. By just looking down at the paper, taking notes, writing down as verbatim as possible the pains that they express, the desires that they have. Capture all that language in their own words. Don't abstract it. None of that stuff. And you're just never trying to convince them of anything. If they said something like, every once in a while somebody would be like, okay, sell me. And then I'd be like, why would I do that? I don't know if we should even work together. Like, well, I mean, don't you want to work with me? And I'd say, I don't know yet. You seem like a nice person, but I don't know if I can help yet. It's like going to a doctor and saying, like, sell me on something. It doesn't make sense. You need to find out why they're there. What are the symptoms? What are the pains? And then once you start to have them, once they start sharing the symptoms, you'll be able to go deeper and deeper and deeper and say, okay, what's the underlying cause here? What is the problem? It's a very diagnostic type of conversation. It's actually very much like when you go to a doctor and you're like, doc, I just don't feel right. Like something's wrong. Like I feel like maybe, I don't know, I need like a triple bypass. And the doctor's not going to say, okay, I'll give you a triple bypass. It'll be $100,000. They're going to say, well, this is pump the brakes here. Are you having some kind of like discomfort in your chest? Be like, yeah. Like, well, and then they'll just ask you all these questions, diagnostic questions to figure out maybe what the cause is or really what your desired future state is. My desired future state would be I want to stop having these chest pains because it's terrifying me, something like that. So same exact way with your client. The doctor is not going to let you tell them what procedure to do on them, unless maybe it's a plastic surgeon. But even then, it probably wouldn't. So it's like, be like that in this meeting. Be like your doctor. Just be calm. If you don't get the gig, it's no skin off your nose. See if there's a good fit. All right, so let's talk more about the why conversation. Usually what'll happen is people will come to you and they'll say they've self-diagnosed. They want the triple bypass. How long is it going to take for the triple bypass? How much is it going to cost for the triple bypass? Can you do a triple bypass? You say, yeah, I can do that. I've done that a million times, but let's make sure that it's something you need. So for me, when I was doing mobile consulting, it was always like, we've got a desktop website and we want you to make it mobile friendly. We want the buttons to be, and they do a bunch of research enough to make themselves dangerous. They'd say stuff like, make the buttons bigger, or we want it to be, we want mobile responsive. That's what they always said. We want mobile responsive, which isn't even a term, like, because they're not experts. So I'm not going to let them tell me what to do. So I'd be like, okay, I understand what you're talking about. I get what you're saying. And then after they were done brain dumping all the self-diagnoses and the stuff that they wanted to tell me to do, I'd say, all right, that's all great. I've got pages of notes here already. Thanks for all that. Let's back up and set the bigger context here, because if we were to work together, I would have to make a million decisions. I'd be making hundreds of decisions per day. I'm not going to call you about every one of those. I want to understand what you're trying to achieve here so I can make all these little decisions on your behalf and make sure I'm not going in the wrong direction or painting us into a corner or driving us to the wrong place. So if we could start with this, it would be great. Why not do this? I know this is a weird question, but why not do this project? What will happen if you don't do this? Is there some, what would be the downside of not doing this? It's going to take a lot of time. It's going to be super expensive. It's going to tie up your employees who already have full-time jobs, as you know. So why would you do this risky, expensive thing at all? Do you think there's going to be some benefit that comes from it that will outweigh all of the costs in time and money? And a good client will say, oh, yeah, great question. I mean, here's our thinking on that. And now they wouldn't have shared any of this stuff with you yet because they already feel like they decided that. But they decided it in a vacuum without an expert like you. It's like a patient planning their own triple bypass. It's nice that they are interested enough to go to that effort, but it was probably mostly a waste of time, and there could be a much easier solution, and they're telling you the wrong thing to do, something that might not even get them the outcome they're looking for, which they have as yet not even shared with you. So the first question is, why this? Why do this? Why not do this? What is the point of even doing this? And then once you get a satisfactory understanding of that, you could move on to, well, why do this now? Why not wait? You told me it's been going on for 12 months already. What's another 6 months? Is this really high pressure right now? And if they say something like, yeah, well, we're really just like looking around right now and seeing what our options would be and getting some prices, I'd be like, all right, I'm out of here. I would politely be like, okay, well, why don't you get back to me in 6 months when you're actually shopping for something? That almost never happens, though. By the time they reach out to a consultant or some kind of perceived expert, they're like, usually they waited too long. So just like a lot of people do with doctors. So they would say, oh, no, this is urgent. Either the board of directors is threatening to replace the CEO, especially if you're talking to the CEO. Or Amazon is making moves into our space, and we need to really capture whatever market share we can right now before they move into our space, or whatever the urgency is. Hopefully, there'll be some kind of urgency. Hopefully, they'll have to do the project. And then the third thing is, why would you hire someone expensive like me, a specialist, to help you with this? Couldn't you do it internally? Couldn't you get somebody from Fiverr? Couldn't you get your cousin Vinny to do it? And get just hire employees, get an intern. Like, why not do any of these cheaper things? And you get them to tell you why they can't do the cheaper things. If they can do the cheaper things, they're not going to be a great client for you. They say, okay, go do the cheaper thing. You don't need, the mansion doghouse guy. If I'm the guy that makes doghouse mansions, then what are you talking to me for? If you just want a cheaper one. If you want a cheap one, just do it yourself. Get a regular dude that makes doghouses to make a really big one. So the why me, you can probably tell, is heavily contingent on you being perceived as the go-to person for this thing. So if you're just a garden variety web developer, or you're just another copywriter, well, that's something you need to change. You want to become the one and only for something. And if you can, and it takes a little time. It can take 6 months. It could take 18 months. Depends on how focused you get, and it depends on how much access you have to the target market. Depends on how good your idea is, how crispy the expensive problem is. But if you focus way down on something highly specialized, maybe you're the one that wrote the book on it, then you're going to be strongly differentiated. You're going to attract good clients automatically. You're going to get more inbound leads. And when you get into this conversation, they're going to have an answer for why they can't hire any of these cheaper commodity players for whatever their reason is. They'll have some reason, who knows what it is, but they're going to say it to you. And as you're taking pages and pages of notes of the answers to the why conversation questions, these 3 why questions, they're gonna write the proposal for you, almost everything but the proposal options. Basically, they're gonna give you all the language you need to fill out the situation appraisal, to put benefits into each option that they actually care about, and then at the end, you're gonna say, at the end of the meeting, you're gonna say, all right, I think there's a good fit here. I've got all these notes. What does a home run look like? Let's say I knock this out of the park for you. What would a home run look like? And they'll sit back and they'll be like, oh, home run would be like doubling our traffic to the website. Or the home run would be doubling the conversion rate in our mobile checkout. Or the home run would be doubling our net promoter score, or doubling employee morale, or our brand in the marketplace, or our thought leadership position. Something they'll say, and they'll say it in some concrete way. If they said we want the CTO to be perceived as like the thought leader in the space, and I'd say, well, how do you know he's not the thought leader in the space now? And they'd say, well, I don't know. I guess because he never gets invited to speak at Davos. And I'd say, okay, so if he or she did get invited to speak at Davos or TED or some really prominent conference next year, you'd feel like it was a success. And they'd say, yeah, that would be amazing. I would say, okay, that's the target. I can't guarantee that would happen, but I do think you're right that by having this, this white paper or this course or this series or this book that I'll ghostwrite, potentially, or help with the ghostwriting of a book, I think that could lead to that, and I can guarantee my piece. And if the client believes that is potentially going to lead to what they want, even if it's something intangible as thought leadership, then all right, that's going to be worth a specific dollar amount to them, the same way a venti pipe place is worth a specific dollar amount to me. Okay. If they can't tell you what a home run looks like, you can flip it around and say, well, how are you going to know if I did a good job? And they're like, I don't know. And then if we hate the thing, and if you hate the thing, well, what would that look like? What would be a disastrous outcome? And they'd say something like, oh, if traffic went down, or if conversion rate went down, or if our CTO was a laughing stock in the industry, those would all be disasters. You'd be like, okay, so you might be able to flip the disaster around into a desirable outcome. Say, okay, so if the CTO was like well respected and was being invited to participate in scholarly articles or in panels with like luminaries, then that would be a sign that he or she was perceived as a thought leader, right? I'd say, right, okay. So this is how you figure out what the success metric is. Think about anybody you ever hired to do anything, whether it's a plumber or a landscaper or a virtual assistant, and you have some expectation that it might even be like a subconscious gut instinct, but you know if they do something and you're like, you have a reaction, a negative reaction to it, you're measuring something. Like if you have a negative reaction to some kind of service that somebody provided, you're measuring something. And if you think about it, you can tell what you measured. It might just be a lizard brain subconscious reaction and you just react and you don't think about it. But if you do think about it, whether you're dissatisfied or satisfied with the service, if you think about it for a second, you can pinpoint the things that made you feel however you're feeling. And that practice, if you practice that, not practice it, if you're just conscious of it all the time in your daily life, you'll get better at being able to help potential buyers through that same kind of exercise. So like imagine a future, we're done. What would be a horrible outcome? And what would be an amazing outcome? And at that point, you're probably going to find some kind of success metric if you haven't found it already. Okay. So let's jump back to questions. Yeah, so it looks like each one of these sections basically takes 15 minutes to go through. So we should be done by 2:30 Eastern time, so another 15 minutes. It looks like tons of people are staying on. Thanks for hanging around. I will just take questions for as long as I can here. You can ask me anything about any of the sections I covered today. If you have questions about the pricing seminar, you can hit me with those too. And I'll just keep going until as long as I can, basically. I think at some point Crowdcast will kick us off, but I think I've got a few hours. Okay, so here's a question. How should we tackle the details when finishing the project? If the client says, I guessed that doing X was included in the proposal. So that sounds like a kind of a scope question. So a couple things. When you present a proposal with 3 options, anything that's in option 2 is obviously not in option 1. And anything that's in option 3 is obviously not in option 2. And it's obviously not in option 1. So you've got, if you've been focusing the client, I think during a project, you should be in contact with the client at least weekly, at least. So assuming that you've been communicating all along, which is what you need to do to keep the project on track in the first place. So hopefully you're doing that. But things like this shouldn't happen at the end. If they do, be like, well, that was option 3. Like you bought option 2. So, sometimes if it's possible, it's not always possible. Sometimes you could say, well, you can pay for option 3 now and I'll do that stuff now, but it's obviously not included in the option you selected. So I don't know what you want me to do. So that's one thing. The options are, the higher options obviously don't include, the lower options obviously don't include the things from the higher options. Another thing is the risks and assumptions section that I didn't really talk about today is where you would list all of your risks and assumptions, which would probably include things like that. So assumptions, a classic one for software development, a classic one is you build a new system for somebody and, you could say, this the assumption is that your team will enter the data into the new system. There will not be an import. There will not be a data migration. It will be impossible. It will pollute the new system. The data needs to be re-entered by hand. There will not be, when I deliver the system, it will have no data in it, and your team will need to re-enter the data, or you'll run systems in parallel, and all the new work will go into the new system, and the old system will stay there until all the jobs are done, and then you'll just not use it anymore. So depending on the nature of the system, this might be a big deal. It might not be a big deal. Maybe option 3 in your proposal is that you do handle the data migration, and they picked option 2, and you say, well, look, option 3 was the data migration one. We haven't been planning to do it. You didn't pick that option anyway, so you can maybe upgrade to that option now if you want, but it was clear in the proposal that you signed. What's another thing? Another thing to say about this is that the client, I'm interpreting I'm interpreting, I guessed that doing X was included in the proposal. I'm guessing that that's some kind of a task. It's a tasky kind of thing. So it indicates to me that the client would be thinking too much about scope. So you don't want them thinking about your job. So if this is some kind of specific deliverable, like, I don't know, like like a customer portal or something, like you built some internal system and they just assumed it was going to have a customer portal, then I would say I would go back to the stated goal of the project, the desired outcome. There's going to be no place in the proposal unless it was required for the desired outcome, where I would list something like, I don't know, like a download, like a messaging system or a place for clients to download their own statements as PDFs. And they just assumed it would have that. And I would say at that point, if they had some kind of assumption like that, that literally was just not covered anywhere in the proposal and they just assumed it would be there, I would say, all right, well, how is that going to contribute to the desired outcome, which was, I don't know, increased customer satisfaction or decreased customer churn or whatever. And they said, well, it won't. We just thought it would be there. Or they'll either have a good reason or not a good reason. If they have a good reason, then and you believe and they can make a case for the fact that having the PDF download thing or whatever it is will help increase customer satisfaction numbers, then you're probably going to want to do it. So just do it. If it has no relationship to the desired outcome, like employee morale, and it's like PDF download in a customer portal, be like, well, how does that contribute to the desired project outcome? We're trying to improve employee morale or productivity or something. And they would say, well, it doesn't really. And it's like, all right. I would say, all right, well, I mean, if you want that as a feature, I'll make a note of it. At any point in the project, even if it wasn't the end, if somebody requested some kind of feature that was outside of the scope of the desired outcome, not the spec, the desired outcome, I'd say, that sounds like a good idea. I'll keep track of all the good ideas that come up around the course of our engagement, but it doesn't contribute to the desired outcome, as we've both just agreed. So we can revisit it after we've declared victory on the project we're working on. And then when the project we're working on is successful, then I can give you a price for all of these enhancements. So that's what I would do. Next question. How do you value price something like a security or architecture assessment where the goal is identifying or reducing risk of loss, not developing a new product or service that will increase revenue? So through the why conversation, why do you want this assessment? Why do you want an assessment? If they don't want one, then it's not worth anything. So it's not a great fit for that kind of product or service. That client's not a great fit for an assessment. But if they say, hey, I'd like to talk to you about an assessment, or I'd like to talk, you're a security expert, I'd like to talk to you about our closed caption TV system. All right. Then they tell you all these things they want you to do. And then you say, okay, let's back up. Why do you want to do this in the first place? Like, what's the bigger context here, so that I can help ensure that if we do work together, I can hit a home run for you. And they'd say, well, I'm up nights every night worried that these new regulations are going to blah, 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 blah. And they're terrified that they're going to be hit with like a 5 million euro fine or something like that. Okay. And then I would say, well, I could. Then you need to figure out exactly what the right, how much they know. So for an assessment, in other words, if they've already had an assessment done, they don't need an assessment. If they know what the problems are, and you're like, okay, then you could move on to a different kind of engagement, propose something different, like where maybe you oversee the remediation of the security issues or whatever. But based on your question, I'm just going to assume that they don't know what the risk is, but for some reason they fear that there's going to be a loss. There's going to be some kind of problem. Find out what they think the problem is going to be. What is the impact? What is the likelihood in their minds? And that's going to give you a rough value. I mean, multiply that by the size of the company that you're talking to, and it could easily be something they would pay $100,000 to mitigate perceived risk. So in other words, I understand your question though. It's not saving them any money. I mean, you can't prove that it saved them any money. You can't prove that it made them any money, but they want it. You don't need to figure out how much money it is or isn't going to make for them, or how much money it is going to save or make for them. You just need to figure out how bad they want it. And if they want it really bad and they've got a lot of money and they see you as the only alternative or the best alternative to make this pain in their chest go away, then it's going to be worth some function of those factors. All right, so then the little update, our clients want us to do it, and be like, okay, what if you don't do it? Can't you just get different clients? This is total why conversation. You just ask why. Our clients want to do it. In my mind, I say, so what? Our clients want us to do it. Well, tell them no. What happens if you tell them no? I'd be polite, obviously, but just to make an impression. In your head, I'm always thinking they'd say, oh, well, can you make me a new system? You're like, yeah, I could, but why would I do that? Well, this one's really inefficient. So what? So I have to do all the data entry 3 times. And that matters because why? Well, because I'm working until 8 o'clock 5 nights a week. So what? My wife's going to leave me if I miss another soccer game. Oh, really? How much would you lose in the divorce? Probably $1 million. Good news, I can do the new system for half that. So you need to drill down until you find the spot where it matters to them and how much it matters to them. And, it's pretty easy to get a sense of what their buying power is based on the cap expense of the company, the kind of company it is. So you can figure out most of these things. It's the desire, why they desire this thing. Let's see. Yeah, exactly. So David's commenting on the question, right? So I can say your revenue is X, you could lose Y. I can do it for Z. Got to figure that out, right? So yeah, I mean, that would be one approach. Like if they have a whale client that's paying them $1.5 million a year and has threatened to leave if they don't get a security assessment from some recognized expert, and that happens to be you, then you can charge a fair amount of money for it. Yeah. I don't know if I would call an assessment a project. I don't know how big the thing is. Remember what I said a project was, right? Collaborative, beginning, middle, and end. Sounds like something that you might be able to do as a productized service and just sell it for 50 grand or 10 grand or whatever you want on your website and just attract people for whom that's a no-brainer. But you could value price it, probably. All right, I'm going to keep going. Let's see. I understand the fixed pricing, especially if I mess up, but if the client is continually missing project deadlines, for example, approvals, or being wishy-washy moving forward, would you then move to blended rate? Nope, they paid up front, so what do I care if they drag their feet? Yeah, so I mean, that's the answer. Like, if you get paid up front, it doesn't really matter if the client's dragging their feet. You just do something else. So when they go dark in the middle of a project for 2 weeks, I'd ping them regularly and say like, hey, I haven't heard anything from you guys. I'm still here. I'm sitting here on the Wednesday meeting with nobody else. Just wanted to let you know this is obviously going to push out the timeline, but whatever. It's not more work for you if they go dark. In that time when they're dark, you can do work on your business. You can work more on that book that's going to make you the go-to person in your space, or you can make your positioning better. You can go out into the target market and you can spend that time helping people for free in forums and social media to attract more clients. You can do more sales interviews. There's all these other things. You can do a webinar. There's all these things you can do to work on your business while your client has gone dark. It doesn't matter. It's like, if it's not going to jeopardize the project, which it rarely does, it might jeopardize the deadline, but who cares? It's not going to cost them anymore. Unless they have a hard style, got to be done before the Olympics type of deadline, it's no big deal. I don't see a problem with it. It's not a great sign. It's a sign that they're not engaged, but if you already got paid, who cares? Now, if you didn't already get paid, now it's a different story, right? Because now you're waiting for your money. Now you're waiting for sign off. Now you're waiting for all these things, and now you're freaking out because you got to backfill some paid work in there to pay the bills while they're off goofing around, not approving your milestone or whatever. That's where getting paid up front is great. And if you do I don't think I explicitly talked about this, but if you do want to negotiate away some of that 100% up front, the second payment should be on a specific date, not on sign off, because of this exact reason. So if they pay you up front 50% and they agree to pay the next 50% in 30 days or 45 days or 60 days or whatever date they want that you think is reasonable, that they think is reasonable, just pick a date, second payment, or even break it into 3 payments, but on specific dates not tied to milestones or sign off. You pay me $25,000 on Monday, you're going to pay me $25,000 on the first day of next month, and you're going to pay me $25,000 on the first day of the month after that. And when we're done, but that's when the payments are happening. So separate the payments from any kind of project milestones or anything like that. Sounds impossible, it's not impossible. Next question, how do you position retainers, marketing strategy, for instance, for audience development? Well, in order to sell what I would consider a true advisory retainer, where someone is paying access for a hotline to your brain, so they pick up the bat phone and they can ask you a question and get an answer they trust real quick, and then hang up and maybe not call you for 3 months. You need to be perceived as an expert. They need to trust you that your opinion is you're going to give them the best possible answer that exists for their question. So that's a pure marketing play. You need to be out there doing podcasts and speaking at conferences. Maybe you write a book. Did I say podcast? You have a podcast maybe. You need to be recognized as a big fish in a small pond, as the one and only, the obvious choice. Obviously awesome, as April Dunford would say. You need to be the obvious choice for somebody, for something. And it can be only maybe a pool of 1,000 potential clients in the whole wide world, but that's plenty of people to keep you busy. So if you can do that, then I wouldn't position the retainer. I would just, so marketing strategy, that's positioning. So if you do, I just mentioned April Dunford. If you do marketing strategy, it's basically positioning. To me, that marketing strategy and positioning are basically the same thing. So you could just put yourself out there just like April Dunford does. She does positioning for startups. I think that's true. Yeah, she goes around to startups and helps them with their positioning. I've got another student, Emily O'Meara, who same thing. She does positioning for open source and cloud native ecosystem companies. So become a positioning person for a very specific kind of company who really needs the results that good positioning will bring to them. And then just price it price it at a place where you would be comfortable. I would say, if you're going to do a real advisory retainer, it should be in the thousands at least per month. And they pay to be able to reach out to you and get answers to questions. Maybe you have a periodic meeting scheduled, but probably not. It's really just access to you to get quick answers, say within 90 minutes during business hours, or the next day if it's after hours, the way that a lawyer would, or like a concierge doctor would. Like, they know that someone they trust is going to get back to them with appropriate context. They're going to understand you. So like, you're going to know everything about them. So when they call you with a quick question, it's burning question, you can get back to them with a really smart answer really quickly. And for someone who makes, hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, maybe millions of dollars a year, that is a really, really attractive service. Let's see here. Next question. Hey, Jonathan, as a creative, my proposals will often require some kind of creative idea or direction attached to it. However, I don't want the proposal to hinge on an initial prospective idea. Any strategies to navigate this? Yeah, and then there's a comment from Brendan. Jonathan's brother from another mother, Chris Doe, surely has some even more on-point advice there as a career creative. YouTube, The School Rocks. Yeah, so the word here that I'm sticking on is require. You're the boss of your business. First of all, you run a business. If you work for yourself, if you're freelancing, or if you're a contractor, whatever you call yourself, a freelance designer or a freelance creative director, whatever you call yourself, you're a business owner and you're running a business, and you get to decide how that business works and what your policies are and how you do it. You also get to decide who your clients are and who your clients are not. So if people are requiring you to do something that you don't want to do, get different clients. I I feel your pain, because if you put, same thing with software, if you put a sort of like, if you include in a pitch, like, here's what the interface is going to look like, or here's like 90% of the thing wireframed out or something like that, and they sign off on that. But then throughout the course of the project, it doesn't make sense to build 50% of the stuff that you did, or you don't want to lock yourself into a particular approach because you don't have enough information to present it. Then sell something different, or sell to different people. So maybe instead of selling whatever, it doesn't really say what you're selling, but maybe instead of selling, maybe the first thing that people buy from you if they want to work with you is an ideation workshop where you do whatever you need to do to be able to present something that you believe is not just pulled out of thin air, wild guess, like pretty picture, beauty contest kind of thing. So maybe that's a half-day workshop with the founder. I don't know who your clients are, but let's say it's startups, since we've been talking about startups. Let's say it's a half day with the founder, the CMO, and I don't know, representatives from 3 key clients. Not just inside the house, inside the walls people, but some of their potential clients, and you do some kind of like ideation workshop, or maybe you do a Google design sprint with them, where you're not presenting anything up front. What you're promising is that by the end of 5 days, we're going to have something that definitely works for specific kinds of users, or whatever I don't know what you're designing. So yeah, it sounds more like that word require is just killing me. Your prospects can't require anything of you. That is not the right word. So I know you feel that way, but that implies to me that you're not getting enough leads. A prospect can't require anything of you. It's your business, your policies. This is the way you do it. And if the client doesn't want to do it your way, they're not a good fit. But it's on you to go attract clients who will be a good fit and who do like the way you do things. So that's all about positioning, and it's a different topic. Of course, we cover it in the pricing seminar, but it's not part of writing the proposal. If you feel like you've got no leverage in the proposal and prospects are requiring you to do something, then it means you don't have enough leverage, and you're not willing to walk away from clients who don't like the way you want to work, especially if you think it's harming them. You shouldn't work with them. So probably not a very satisfying answer, but you just need to attract better clients who want to work the way that you want to work. All right. Question is, some people don't really know their desired state and ask what you can contribute. How can you price for such thing? I wouldn't work with someone who doesn't know what their desired future state is. If you're talking to someone who doesn't know why they're talking to you, if they're talking to you about, like, we want you to, I don't know, I'll go back to the white paper. We want you to write us a white paper. You're like, well, I can do that, but why? We don't know. Everyone else is doing it. My spouse told me we should do that. Someone on the board thinks it's a good idea. Whatever. These are not satisfying reasons. Here's why it makes me nervous when someone doesn't know what they want, what the outcome is, because I can't satisfy that person. They're unsatisfiable if I don't know what the satisfaction criteria is. It's like shooting hoops in the dark. The odds of me getting a basket are like next to zero. It would be pure luck. So I don't want to shoot hoops in the dark. I want to know where the basket is. So if they can't tell me, then I wouldn't even know how to price it. So I would just pass on them because they're just not ready, or you're talking to a gatekeeper and you need to talk to their boss or their boss's boss. So yeah, that would be a hard pass for me if I couldn't. I understand that they're not going to be able to blurt it out, but the why conversation is designed to uncover it with them. And if they're willing to engage in that conversation and you still can't get an answer and they don't know what a home run looks like, I would be terrified. I would never take that on, because to me, my work product, I think every service, really anybody who sells anything, your real product is customer satisfaction. You build customer satisfaction. That's your job. Build customer satisfaction. Anytime somebody is unsatisfied that they paid you money, that is damaging. Your key outcome is customer satisfaction. So I need to know up front with a prospective client how to satisfy them. If they don't know how they could be satisfied, I cannot work with them. And to finish answering your question, and if they do tell me how they can be satisfied and I'm confident that I can do it, then I would price the project, if we're talking about a project, based on the value of the satisfaction to them, or the specific nature of how they want to be satisfied. Okay. Next question is, must a project sign the proposal as evidence of agreement or a legal agreement? I think you said you don't have legal agreements. I keep all legalese out of the sales process. I don't want to trigger a legal review on the other side, the other parties, the client's team. It's very straightforward. I will do this. You will do that. The benefits to you will be X, Y, and Z. And if they want to get the legal team involved, that's a bad sign. I only work with people I like. I make myself vulnerable to them, which builds trust. They make themselves vulnerable to me, which builds trust. It needs to be a trusting relationship. If I don't click with somebody on the phone where communication is stilted, they're not laughing at my awesome jokes, then I probably wouldn't work with them. I'm more of a handshake guy. I know a lot of people think that's insane. Maybe someday it will kill me, but it hasn't yet, knock on wood. But I am not a lawyer. I just have a lot of, errors and omissions insurance. And I have my business is incorporated. So if things went horribly wrong, somebody could go after my insurance. And then if they went horribly wrong on that, even on top of that, nobody can take my house. That's basically how I see it. But do not listen to me. Do whatever makes you comfortable. I just made that decision. It was a personal decision, strategic decision a long time ago. I wasn't going to get lawyers involved with these things. It's just not worth it to me. Yeah. So do they need to sign the proposal? I like to know. Sometimes there'll be iterations. Sometimes there'll be some kind of a tweak to a proposal, or there'll be a re-engagement, like a new proposal. I like to have a signed one just so I can remember which one we picked. But usually payment is enough to say, you could say something like, payment implies that you accept this proposal, but since my proposals have 3 options, I want a little X on the box next to the one they picked. Some kind of paper trail, just because I'm not going to remember 6 months later exactly what happened. And there sometimes is cause to go back and be like, oh yeah, I did say that I was going to do this or that or whatever. Like once you're down in the weeds of the project, it can be, it's good to go back and say like, wait, okay, where were we? What's the big picture here? And I like to make sure I know which proposal is the one that we're working on. So I would like to get some kind of indication that that was the one that was the final one. All right, next question. Our first projects with clients are some form of discovery or an audit of their existing situation solution to help define a vision of longer-term success and a plan for the road ahead. Is the best way to option that kind of scope to focus on the resolution or degree of polish for the same typical set of deliverables or fewer deliverables? I'm not sure I understand the question, but I do understand what you mean. When I meet with, I might not make this. Okay, what we're talking about here is a roadmap, some kind of initial deliverable, initial engagement that's going to result in recommendations or some kind of a roadmap or prioritized feature list or some kind of like plan, because the client, there's too many unknown unknowns. They don't even know what's possible, or they're just like really over their head, and they've got some mandate, some really compelling reason why they need to make a big change, and they just don't even know. Like, I don't know, like you're going to put a huge addition on your house, or you wanted to like put a 3rd floor on your house or something, and you're just like, I don't even know if it's possible. I want a master bedroom upstairs maybe, or a pool on the roof, but I don't even know if it's possible. So, I want to bring in an expert to kind of like brainstorm through this with me or an expert that can kind of like check some stuff, tell me what my real options are, and then potentially have more of a plan, more certainty moving forward. But they're kind of probably they're at the point where they're kind of not even sure what's possible. So it's just too blurry. So yeah, that's a perfect situation for a roadmap. I wouldn't call it an audit or paid discovery. That seems to turn people off. You want to frame it such that at the end, they'll have some kind of new clarity or plan or deliverable that they could take anywhere they want. So it's kind of like an if you're a builder, let's say you're an a design build architect. So like you do architecture stuff, but you also build the house, and you present yourself to the world as a builder, a home builder, and they say, how much for a new house? And you're like, well, first we need to do discovery. And you end up doing the architecture piece and charging them for it. And it's like, okay, but you like don't give them the blueprint. You're like, okay, it'll cost like $500,000 to build this house, but like you kept the blueprint, or maybe you give it to them, but you don't even, it's not even framed as something that's valuable. It's almost like they paid you to do a bunch of work to give them a price. And it feels weird. People don't generally like that. But if you say, well, they come to you and they say, hey, we want you to build us a house. We see your trucks around. You seem to do good stuff. We want you to build us a house. How much would it be? And you say, well, it would be anywhere between 50,000 and 5 million. If you want me to get more specific, then we need to do this first phase where we'll have a conversation. I'll create a blueprint. We'll do elevations. We can even do a VR walkthrough of the virtual environment. And then you can take that and you can either have us build it, or you can take it to someone who's less expensive because we're the most expensive builder in town. So you can shop it around if you want, that's fine, but we'd be happy to give you a quote for the build as well. So okay, that seems reasonable. Or they'll say, no, we want to start building the house without a blueprint, in which case they're saying not a good customer. Like anybody that wants to build a house without a blueprint is probably not a customer that a home builder wants. So assuming that they're like, yeah, a blueprint sounds like a great idea, then you sell them that as discretely valuable. It's valuable unto itself because it's portable. They can take it to someone else and shop it around and get prices from a bunch of people. So if you call it a roadmap or a plan or a strategy or an architecture or a roadmap, if I didn't say that already, that will be a portable deliverable that they can use to take the next step. And it doesn't necessarily lock them into working with you. So then it feels like valuable on its own. This is a question. I think this goes back to might as well pricing. So please give a real life example of when I really want to land the gig. So and Brandon says, I think that's the dream client scenario, although dream client doesn't equal keep the lights on money. Excuse me. A real life example is exactly that. So like I can remember when I was back doing mobile consulting, I had a bunch of big clients like Intel and T-Mobile and Time Inc. and Entertainment Weekly and a bunch of them, Nokia and a bunch, whatever, you name it. And one that I really always wanted to work with and never had a chance to was Target. And I was at a conference somewhere and I got talking to a high up marketing executive at Target. And I think he even had mobile in his title or innovation in his title or something like that. And I totally clicked with this guy. I wanted to work with him so bad, and I wanted to work with Target so bad. And I actually blew the sales interview because I was so over eager that it probably came across as desperate, and I completely overwhelmed the guy. Stupid. It was a stupid move on my part. But I was so excited, but I was too excited, I think. But it probably, if I had gotten to the point where I was going to give him a proposal, it probably would have been might as well pricing, because I just wanted to have Target on my website. I wanted to work with them, and I wanted to work with this guy. I thought it would be a really cool project, very high visibility, good marketing value for me. So that's an example. I mean, a much more common example is you're desperate for the money. So you want to give 3 options and you want them to pick something, at least something, and not just totally blow them out of the water, with sticker shock with like a Goldilocks pricing curve that usually has like a really high number on it. So yeah, that's the kind of thing. Like if SpaceX or Google or somebody came along and was like, or Tesla and was like, oh, we want you to help us with our mobile initiative, I'd be like, cool, okay, that's going to look good on the resume. Question: how can I get my next client? Beats me. I don't know what you do. But honestly, here's the tried and true approach to getting a client. First of all, decide what clients you want to work with. I get emails all the time from people who say, my biggest challenge right now is getting enough clients. And I'll say, okay, what kind of clients do you want to get? And they're like, I don't know. I'm like, well, it's no wonder you're not getting them. You don't even know who you want to get. So pick who you want to get. So be specific. Names of humans. So you could say like, I really want to work with Jay-Z, or I really want to work with Elon Musk, or I really want to work with Target, or I really want to work with Nike, or I don't know, Slack. Like, who do you want to work with? Who, like, if you imagine in 3 years that you had a bunch of logos on your website, what logos would it be? What are the clients that you really want to work with? Netflix, Disney, you name it, AT&T, I don't care. Who's that dream list? Or maybe it's not household names. Maybe it's like mission-driven businesses, or it's nonprofits, or it's pet animal shelters, or something to do with pets or animals. Like okay, once you sort of focus down on who you want, make a list of 20 actual clients that you think you could actually potentially land, or at least help. Maybe you don't start with Elon Musk if you want to help, but you could start with someone like that, someone iconoclastic, or someone who wants to be like Elon Musk, or some kind of maybe not as successful as him, but a successful startup founder. I don't know. But if you're having trouble finding clients and don't know who you're trying to find, those two things might be related. So decide who you want to reach. So, okay, once you have a list of 20 actual clients, see if you can drill it down to a name of the person inside of that organization you want to work with. Ideally, higher up the better. Ideally, the top person, CEO, founder, whatever. And then it's like, okay, what does that person want? Not need. What does that person want? What are the things that person wants? Maybe it's probably wants, or maybe you can find in social media, or maybe you can find in blog posts or podcasts, where you just stalk the person. Be like, online, not in person. But the people you want to work with, study them, find out what they want. And if what they want is something you can help them get, then start connecting with them. Be like, hey, I heard when you interviewed, when they interviewed you on NPR, that you said that you really wished there was some way to do this thing. Well, that's exactly what I do. And I'd love to, see I'd love to jump on a phone call and see if there's a fit. See if there's some way that we could work together. But that's the kind of thing I do. So yeah, does that sound like a lot of work? It is, but it works. All right. Ooh, here's a good question. What about pricing for ongoing services like part-time CTO or part-time CISO, where it's not a project with a specific desired end state, but ongoing subject matter expertise, etc.? Yeah, this would just be like a retainer or virtual fractional CTO or fractional CISO. Just set a price for it that would make you happy. Set a scope for it, like a level for the engagement, and just go to town. Your base, depending on your level of involvement and how much work you're doing. Like if you're a fractional CTO and you're coding stuff, that doesn't feel great to me. But if you're a fractional CTO and you're doing like innovation and sort of research and making decisions about the architecture, ongoing decisions about that sort of thing, that's pretty interesting. I have a student who's like a fractional VPE, where he manages one-on-ones and development, sort of professional development of the developers. So you can do that. Just pick a price, and if you land one, then great, raise the price and try and land another one. If you can do 2 or 3 at a time, that's probably pretty good. Probably get overwhelming if you had more than 2 or 3. So yeah. And you can anchor it against the price of having a full-time CTO, or maybe someone with your capabilities would be too expensive for them to get full-time and they don't need full-time yet, or something like that. My camera's gone out of focus again. Autofocus is a sort of blessing and a curse. All right, unfortunately, I'm going to have to jump off. There's still a bunch of questions here, but we're running out of time. So thanks so much for joining. We still have over 100 people here, which is amazing because this has been a real marathon. But I hope it's been valuable. If you have, I'm going to send out an email if you have yet more follow-up questions, or if I wasn't able to get to your question here, then just reply to the email that I send out, and I'll see what I can do there. So hopefully we can connect over email after this. And if you are interested in more, you can check out the pricing seminar. It starts on Monday, this coming Monday. I'm recording this, what is today? March 4th, 2021. Pricing seminar only launches twice a year. This is the spring session, and it'll be again in the fall. But if you're ready to jump in and figure out how to start getting paid what you're worth, that's what the pricing seminar is for. It starts on Monday, so there's not a lot of time left. All right, thanks again for coming. I really appreciate your time, and I'll hopefully connect with you over email in the next couple days. See ya.